Hello, welcome to this Integrated Skills Wider Waste webinar. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm looking forward to today. We've had a few technical gremlins today, and we'll see how that pans out, but so far so good. I'm looking forward to introducing our speakers. Just a quick introduction to our speakers. We've got Sarah Robinson from the States of Guernsey, Sandy Anderson. If Sandy can connect, and I think we might have just seen him connecting there. And I've got from Fife, who's going to talk about flats, and then we've got Charlotte Slack, head of community, the community shop, head of partnerships at the community shop. Just a little sort of inside track. I've heard all of the speakers before, and that's really one of the reasons I asked them to be part of this webinar, because they were all speakers at the National Food Waste Conference down in London a few months ago. And actually, I thought that the session that they all spoke at was probably it was a very good day. But actually, I thought the session that they spoke on was really good and probably the highlight for me. So quickly grabbed hold of them and saw if they could actually join us on a wider waste webinar. So I'm very pleased they said yes. So thanks very much for joining us. I don't know, is that Sandy? Can you say hello?
Yes, I'm here.
There you go. Great.
Via a call.
Thanks, Andy. You're looking very much like a sort of pink telephone at the moment, but that's great. If you can, I can take you through your slides if you're happy with that. That's brilliant. And thanks very much for the speakers for actually joining us. So a couple of bits of housekeeping. Just wanted to say a little bit about Integrated Skills, why we do this. We've been running our waste webinars now for probably over 5 years, which is quite a surprise to me when I think about it. But we've covered a range of topics. Probably the most successful ones have been ones where we're looking at upcoming policy, where people are really starting to have to think about what's happening, what's changing, what new policies coming up. And because we've got a number of clients and contacts across the UK, we're able to actually make contact with people and ask if people would be prepared to speak or give a case study on something that they're doing. So it seems to be helpful, and so far the feedback we get is very good. I think we must have over 300 attendees over the period that we've done it. So yeah, I mean that's really why we do it. It's a free webinar, and my kind of feeling about it is that it gives waste officers a chance to just possibly for 1 hour a month to actually lift their heads from the desk and kind of have a look at policy, see what's coming up, see what practical projects people are involved in. Yeah, just to sort of get their heads off the desk in a way, really give them an opportunity to think more strategically. A little bit about us, Integrated Skills. We've been running these for a number of years, but our sort of specialism is in in-cab technology, route optimization, trade waste management, which we released recently, and jobs management software. Just say a little bit about that. There's our in-cab system. That's something that I'm particularly interested in and responsible for driving. But we're really interested in sort of changing the conversation around in-cab and back office systems. Prioritizing what we think is really important is that any solution that you give to your crews, to your workforce, has got to be intuitive these days and easy to use, and using technology that's possible. A few upcoming events for us. I'd like to just give you a flavour of what we're up to, what I'm up to, and where we're going to be over the next few months. The next webinar is going to be a RouteSmart. We alternate. Month 1 would be a RouteSmart technical webinar. Month 2 would be one of these wider waste webinars. Talk about wider waste related issues. On the 18th of July, my colleague's going to be talking about using partitions within RouteSmart to create balanced food waste routes. And partitions are really the ability to identify not just a route, but actually divide the work up into days worth of work, whether that's 5 days worth, 10 days worth, or 15 if it's going to be a 3 weekly collection. In relation to food waste, I know that my colleague Josh is going to be talking about how you can actually use partitions powerfully to translate what is either a fortnightly or 3-weekly refuse service or recycling service into your food waste routes. So sort of gathering up all of the work on the same days and actually building balanced food waste routes from those. I'm going to be in Wales on the 9th of July in Cardiff at Larac. In August we're having a bit of a break, but we'll be back in September at RWM in Birmingham. If any of you are going to be there, please come along to our stand and say hello. And again, in the 9th and 10th of October, we'll be at Larac in Birmingham. Just finally to say, over 5 years, we've built up quite a significant archive of webinars. Please go onto our website, which is integrated-skills.com, and look up webinar, and that will take you into a whole range of webinars that you can actually search and have a look, see if there's anything related to what you're interested in. Right, without further ado then, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, who is Sarah Robinson. Sarah's Operations Manager at the States of Guernsey. Sarah, you've actually done this already. I know many of the people who are on the webinar today are kind of trying to fishing around for good practice, experience of how this went. So you're in a great position really just to talk to us about what you did, how it went, and how you went about it. So I'm going to hand over to you from here. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sarah.
Fab, thanks, Stuart, and thank you for the nice introduction. I'm glad to hear that when we spoke in London earlier this year, it was a bit of a highlight for you. So that's really nice to hear. I must admit, when I did the presentation, I thought it was my first public speaking event, job done kind of thing. And then when you contacted me to do it all again, I thought, oh my goodness. But it's a lot more relaxed to be doing it in my spare room in my house rather than stood up in front of a load of people
You're right.
on a stage. So yeah, lovely. Okay, well, hopefully my slides will work okay. You'll have to excuse me if I look like I'm staring off into the distance. I've got kind of my notes behind me. Unfortunately, I don't know it all off by heart. So if I look like I'm staring off to the distance, I'm not. I'm just looking at my notes. So yeah, so a little bit about Guernsey, really. Hopefully some of you will know. Oh, I think I've skipped ahead on my slides already. No, we're okay. So hopefully some of you know a little bit about Guernsey already, or you might have visited the islands. But for those of you that haven't, Guernsey is one of the Channel Islands, and we're located in the channel between England and France. We've got a population of just over 60,000 people and about 27,000 household properties on the island. So quite small in comparison to probably the places that a lot of you are from. We're a crown dependency, and we've got our own laws with 40 deputies who get voted in by the public to represent islanders within the local government over here. So Guernsey Wasters, which is the team that I head up, is one of the unincorporated trading businesses of the States of Guernsey, which essentially means that we're intended to be actually self-funding by charging for our services to cover our expenditure. So we are a government organisation, but we aim to recover all of our expenses through the charges that we actually levy. And Guernsey Waste discharges the operational duties of the island's Waste Disposal Authority, which includes providing waste and recycling facilities and services in line with the island's waste management plan. So Guernsey actually used to landfill a lot of its waste until the waste strategy for the island was developed and approved in 2014. And the approved strategy has the waste hierarchy at its core, which I'm sure all of you know all about and what that is trying to achieve. So it basically focuses on achieving a high recycling rate and waste minimisation right at the top. It was identified as part of the development of that strategy that the segregation of food waste would be a key contributor to achieving a high recycling rate, as it equated to approximately 40% of a residual waste bag. So how did we get there? Which is, I think, the bit that you're all interested to know about. From my perspective, there were really 4 key aspects to introducing the food waste collections. Those were infrastructure, collections, equipment, and public engagement. So everything really that we did can be put into those 4 kind of broad headings. So I'll just take you through kind of those one by one and explain a bit further. So in terms of our infrastructure, we had to procure key bits of kit and also contracts to process the food waste. We built a waste transfer station in 2019, and the idea was that that waste transfer station would receive and manage the food waste. The waste transfer station also receives general waste and glass. It's split into 3 halls, and each hall deals with a different material type. So their food waste is collected from households via curbside collections, and we also receive some from commercial businesses too, because we provide a solution basically for the whole island. It's then pre-processed by being fed into a system which macerates the food and removes any liners and any non-organic material. Water then gets added to make it into a bit of a pumpable liquid, also known as anaerobic digestion soup, although we have had lots of other comparisons to it, including one of our local delicacies, which is bean jar, which basically is just a bean jar stew, but apparently it looks very similar to that. So once that's all processed, it's then pumped into tankers. You can see one in the picture on the screen there. And those are driven down to the local port and shipped over to the UK to an anaerobic digestion plant. And as of 1st of January this year, following a procurement process, our food waste is being managed at Biogen's Basingstoke facility. With regards to the collections, we needed to work with the island's 10 parishes and their contractors to determine how it was best to organise those. Our local parishes are actually responsible under the law for organising the collection. It's not something that sits with us, but we do tell them what we need them to pick up. We just leave it up to them how they do it. So we had to hold numerous workshops with them to talk through possible approaches, discuss what would work, what wouldn't work. So that was with the parishes and their contractors themselves. A little bit of a nuance over here. Collections are actually undertaken overnight because our roads are just too small for these to be undertaken during the day, because otherwise large traffic jams would be caused. So all the collections happen overnight. People put their waste out before they go to bed, and then in the morning it's gone. So a bit like Christmas, but Christmas for waste instead, and it gets taken away. The introduction of the new streams required collection schedules to be amended as well, to ensure each household had a weekly food waste collection. Because each parish differs in terms of their size and demographics, the approach by the contractors also differed. Some of the contractors use split body vehicles with a compartment for food, and the others actually use a dedicated vehicle just for food waste. Some of the contractors also use much smaller vehicles. In our kind of central town area, the roads are extremely tiny to the point that you kind of struggle to even fit a large car down there. So they use a lot smaller vehicles to service those roads. But ultimately, we allowed the contractors to use their expertise to determine the best arrangements for their customers. They were the ones out doing the job all the time, so they knew what would work best and what wouldn't. I must admit, it did take a lot of convincing in terms of there was a lot of, oh, this is never going to work. How are we going to get the food caddies back? This is going to slow things down a lot. So there was a lot of discussion. We got some example caddies over, let them have a go with it, and tried to kind of reassure them that this could work, basically. As part of the introduction of food waste collections, we also reduced the collection of residual waste from weekly to fortnightly. That to encourage the use of the food waste collection service, really, but also to make sure we could implement all of the services that we wanted to. We also started charging for residual waste via an annual household fixed charge and a pay-as-you-throw sticker charge for each bag of waste that's actually set out. And we did that very shortly after the introduction of food waste. We first got the food waste collections introduced to get people used to it, get them to start separating their waste. And then we bought the pay-as-you-throw charges in a few months later. You might be wondering what happens if people don't put a sticker on their bag. Well, we've got enforcement powers to deal with that. And we can issue official warning notices, and on repeat occasions, we can issue a civil fixed penalty fine of up to £60. So as part of the rollout of collections, mainly to make it easier to enforce the introduction of the pay-as-you-throw stickers, to be honest, we actually undid a lot of the communal arrangements where we could. So kind of close or areas where people tended to all sit out at the end, we sort of undid that and said, no, you need to now sit out at your curbside. There were obviously some areas that we couldn't possibly do that, so flat buildings and places where, it just wouldn't work out. So where that was the case, we arranged for larger communal wheelie bins with apertures in the top to be provided. Obviously, we had to make sure that the collection contractors could lift the bin as well, and they weren't emptying it by hand, and that they had bin lifts on the back of the vehicles for those ones. And we also give islanders the opportunity, if they actually miss their collection, we allow them to bring it to the Household Waste and Recycling Centre free of charge. So we've got a couple of wheelie bins down there that people can bring their food waste in if they miss their collection, or they're going on holiday and they don't want it hanging around. Just wait for my next slide to load. So we also decided to provide every household with a kitchen caddy and a large set-out caddy as well. So prior to the collections commencing, we worked with our local post office and made sure all of these were delivered across the island to all households. We did that to make it easier for people, so everyone had all their kit actually delivered to them directly, and there was no excuse of, oh, I can't get to the place where to pick it up. We actually said, no, we'll deliver it to you and make it really easy. We actually also introduced glass collections at the same time. So the pack also included a glass bag, which you can see on the slide there. That's kind of the kit that everyone was supplied with at the time. We give people replacements of the caddies free of charge at the moment, and they're able to be collected from a number of places on the island, such as the Household Waste and Recycling Centre, but also the local parish offices as well. Sorry, I've skipped to the wrong slide. There we go. I think I'm back to where I was. Sorry about that. We took note of RAP's research as well on the use of caddy liners, and we concluded that the cost of providing these would definitely justify increased participation in the service itself. Obviously, we had to invest in a lot of kit to process the food waste, and we wanted to make sure, we were actually getting food waste to process. So we felt that definitely justified the extra, a little bit of extra spend on providing liners to people. We worked with local supermarkets to continue to provide these liners to households free of charge. We do a blue and a clear recycling scheme as well for paper and card, and then your tins, plastics and cartons. And islanders are able to pick up a free roll when they do their shopping. So we added in the food waste bags there. So often the supermarkets have them by the door, so as people are leaving, they've bought all of their stuff, and then they get the bags to get rid of all the packaging that they get at the supermarket. We did consider making the items available for people to collect themselves, but like I said before, we felt we would have a higher participation if we made it really easy for people to get hold of the kit that they needed. We also held a number of drop-in sessions at supermarkets and at key island events in the lead up to the collections. So often people could find us when they were doing their weekly shop, or kind of at local events where they were trying to have a nice time, and we were there kind of going, don't forget you're getting new collections are starting, and try to build up a bit of a hype and a vibe about it. Early days when we had kind of little information, we didn't have kind of the caddies available. It was very much kind of very cynical. People like, oh, it will never work, and lots of concerns. But as things went on and we actually had the caddies, and it was almost starting to become a bit more real. People started to get a bit more excited about it. And I think because we've been around so much, everyone knew on the island that it was happening, that was for sure. And obviously with the pay-as-you-throw charges coming in, we use that as an incentive to sort of say to people, look, it's really good to separate out your food waste, because you won't have to pay to dispose of it if you're separating it out. We also undertook a number of leaflet drops to homes as well, with information about how the new services were going to work and what they could expect. So in the roll up to that, again, just lots of leaflet drops. We also made sure we had clear guidance on what could and couldn't go into the food waste, and we've got that printed on the caddy liners themselves. Don't get me wrong, we've had some very weird and wonderful questions about what can and can't go in. I think some of the highlights for me were probably dog waste and roadkill. When you kind of get those sorts of questions, they do take you back a bit, but you can kind of see the logic why people perhaps have asked that. But we kind of stuck with the line of, if it's being prepared for human consumption, then it can probably go in. We also provided lots of frequent updates via our local media as well, at key points when the starter kits were going out and when the go live collections were agreed. And as a very small community, the new services were really a hot topic of conversation for a long time. And we got used to hearing this will never work and public petitions, but thankfully it did work out. And I think most people, if you ask them, are quite pleased to have the service now. We also increased the number of resources within the team as well for a set period of time, just to deal with the sheer quantity of phone calls we had. in the month on the run up to it and the few weeks after, we had a huge surge of phone calls. So yeah, definitely be prepared for that. So what were the results? I'm sure you're keen to know. So we undertook a number of participation surveys before and after the introduction of the food waste collections going live. And we were really chuffed that we started off with a really high participation rate from the get-go. And that was maintained in 2019 and 2020, reaching over 90% in participation in the collections. It's not something we've repeated recently because we're not seeing a drop off in tonnage or anything like that. So we think people are still maintaining that high participation rate. We do believe that a big driver for that was the introduction of charges for general waste, which I appreciate isn't an option available to a lot of people. But we do think that providing the equipment with providing everyone with the equipment early on and making it as easy as possible to get on board really does help. Often if you give people the resources, they're more likely to crack on and do it. And of course, moving to fortnightly residual waste collections also had an impact as well, with obviously people wanting to get rid of their more smelly waste more frequently. So in terms of actual tonnages collected, in the first year we captured 3,655 tonnes. Most of this was from households, but we also received some material from the commercial sector as well. We're the only kind of licensed facility on the island to accept food waste. So if it's not going in general waste, if it's been segregated, it's all coming to us. We actually charge for commercial food waste when it comes in at the gate. It's charged at a lower rate than what we charge commercial customers for general waste. Again, same principle as charging the householders for general waste, but not for food waste, all to encourage that separation. So if large quantities of food waste does get found in a commercial general waste load, then a penalty charge actually applies to them. So again, there's kind of really financial incentives there for the businesses to get behind it. There aren't actually any laws or restrictions for what householders can put in their residual waste. So if people put their food waste in their black bags, obviously there's no law against that. But I think often people think it's obviously the right thing to do and do get behind it. In 2020 and 2021, most of the food waste came in from households, obviously due to COVID and the lockdowns. But then in 2022, we continue to see similar capture of material. We're still in the process at the moment of analysing our 2023 data, but it will be available soon on our website. We publish a big annual report each year. So yeah, if you go to gov.gg/recycling, there will be a report on there very soon. So we also undertook a waste composition exercise to determine how much food waste was in household residual waste bags before the new collections commenced, as well as various points after the collections were introduced, such as before the charges and residual waste were introduced. It was pleasing to see that the amount of food waste ending up in residual waste has actually remained at a steadily low amount since the introduction of food waste collections in September 2018. And the capture rate for household food waste since it's introduced has been over 80%. And we had a lot of feedback from people saying they didn't actually realise how much food waste they were wasting until they actually separated it. Before we introduced it, a lot of people said, "Oh, I don't waste any food waste. No, a couple of tea bags." But when they started separating it out, they were pretty shocked at how much they were wasting each week, and obviously the money involved in that too. So this graph here, hopefully it's popped up on your screens, but it shows the changes to the weights of avoidable and unavoidable food waste in residual bags. This is since the introduction of food waste. So as you can see, overall, it's dropped massively. The average weight dropped from over 4 kilograms per household per week to less than 0.8 kilograms. So an 82% reduction of food waste in general waste bags, which is brilliant. The weights of both avoidable and unavoidable food waste ending up in residual bags reduced significantly, but avoidable waste did remain higher. Oh, sorry, I've skipped the wrong slide again. We think that is a result of greater inconvenience or kind of, the yuck factor of having to tip a pot of yogurt into the food waste caddy or, touching gone off meat. So that's why we think that is a lot higher than the other side of things. We also undertook a customer feedback survey in 2021 across the range of services that we provided, and we were really pleased that 77% of respondents were either highly satisfied or satisfied with the curbside collections as a whole. However, as collections take place at night here, as I said, we did have feedback that often caddies weren't being seen by people when it was dark, and this has led to quite a number of instances of them getting run over after they've been emptied, as they've kind of managed to find their way slightly onto the road. If there's been a bit of wind, they've kind of blown into the road. So what we did is we actually changed the colour of the caddies from black to silver, a really simple change, but it had a good impact. And it does appear to have reduced the number that we see get run over, and of course the cost of replacements. The silver caddies are slightly more expensive than the black caddies, but like I say, it actually works out better because we're not having to replace as many of them. Because we're also exposed to the coast, we're prone to getting some severe weather over here. So we liaise with the collection contractors to try and understand the best way to get them to stop blowing away. And some of the contractors have found things like returning them upside down with the lid open. Looks a bit odd. It looks like someone's not really bothered to put the caddy back properly. They've just kind of, lobbed it. Actually, they do that with intention because it stops them blowing around as much. And islanders also come up with really inventive ways to set their caddy out, and people building actual kind of like wooden boxes to set them out in, installing little hooks on the wall as well. So they're all kind of coming up with ideas. And we also did a social media campaign as well to encourage people to secure their caddy when setting them out and make it really identifiable. So there's kind of some examples there from our little comms campaign that we did. We do have to be really clear to people, though, not to weigh the caddy down or put anything inside the caddy to weigh it down. They can put something on the top, but please don't put it on the inside, because obviously that will cause damage to the collection vehicles and also the processing equipment if it gets through. We've actually had a cannonball turn up at the waste transfer station before, and we've had to hook that out of the food waste before it causes much more damage than it could have done. So we're really proud. We had a target set by our local government to achieve a household recycling rate of 70% by 2030. The idea was, we thought when we introduced food waste collections and all the other bits and pieces, it would slowly ramp up over the years. But we actually achieved that with a recycling rate of 73% in 2019. So as soon as we introduced the new services, it shot up massively. And most of that is, the big driver has been the food waste collections. Our recycling rate has dropped down a little bit over the last couple of years. So we're reporting a really high 60% or 68% recycling rate in the last couple of years, which we're obviously still very proud of. So what's next for us? As well as trying to reduce costs, we're still committed to trying to move food waste up the waste hierarchy. And we've tried to encourage that a lot over recent years. As part of the customer services survey, we gathered information of how many people knew about our Love Food Hate Waste campaign, and what forms, so we could work out which were the most popular. We do calendars, we advertise on the back of milk cartons. So it was really to identify how people knew about it the best. And we also gathered information about how the introduction of collections had actually impacted home composting. And we noticed a lot of people who used to home compost stopped when the food waste collections got introduced. So again, that's something that we're actually trying to encourage people to do, because if we don't have to process it and deal with it, that's less cost for us as well. So home composting and kind of reduction of food waste is a big way that we're trying to drive. And there's just some pictures there of an annual calendar that we produce on the island with, we team up with local chefs, get them to design recipes, and put lots of hints and tips in there about how to reduce food waste. We also undertook a big feed lunch where we fed around 500 pupils and staff from a local school on a budget of £800, just to highlight the average amount of food that families in the UK throw away in terms of money each year. So that was quite a good kind of visual impact of the cost involved with food waste. We also have a very active home composting campaign whereby we work with local garden centres to sell the composting kits for just £10 and actively promote that throughout the year. So we've actually got a composting week happening at the moment. So just in terms of key takeaways, I'll wrap up now, ready for the next speaker. But the key things that I would say are know your starting position by undertaking studies such as waste composition analysis to enable you to really measure your success and know where to focus your efforts to make improvements. Don't underestimate the power of good communications. I know it's an obvious one to say, but use all possible forms to make sure that your message is received, and keep stakeholders updated and informed as the journey progresses, and try and get them excited for it as well. Get feedback from your customers early on after you've introduced things to find out what's working well and what isn't, and try and take action to improve it straight away, because that seems to have a really good impact for people wanting to carry on if you listen to them and make changes. And ensure you build enough time into the rollout of services to manage any unpredicted events, such as delays of key items arriving. That was a risk for us being on an island, any shipping delays. So we made sure we built in plenty of buffers for that. And of course, award of contracts, that always seems to take longer than you always hope. And where possible, try and determine possible incentives to encourage customers to participate in the new services. I appreciate that's a really difficult one, especially in government, but yeah, hopefully there might be some ideas out there. Our contact details are on the slide should you've got any further questions. I think we might take some questions at the end as well. So yeah, more than happy to be contacted and answer any questions. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. That was an excellent case study. I like that. It's clear that there's been an awful lot of thought gone into how the whole scheme has been designed, with your carrots and sticks carefully kind of positioned to incentivize people in the right way. But really appreciate that. Thank you. Next, we have Sandy Anderson. Sandy joins us through the technology of telephone. Sandy, apologies. I know that you've had a terrible day actually trying to get this, trying to get through firewalls and whatever to get onto the platform. So I really appreciate you joining us and doing this thing over the phone. Take a long, hard look at Sandy. He's the chap in the middle there. So you're not going to see his face in the presentation, but there he is. And Sandy, thank you very much for joining us to talk about planning food collections for flats in Fife. If you want to just give me a shout, Sandy, when you want the next slide, and I'll move through the slides for you.
No problem. Hopefully the audio is okay.
Yeah, it is. It's fine.
It has been a bit of a nightmare. We got the firewall unblocked this morning, but then the whole computer system has to update itself, which happens automatically, and we weren't able to force it. So I have absolutely no doubt it will happen overnight, and first thing tomorrow morning I'll be able to log on to this. No problem. It'll be all fine.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
So can I just check? I've got my slides up in front of me on the screen.
Yep.
I'll just check that you've got the delivering the food waste service and my name and job title.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. We'll just move on to the slide after that then. And which should be a
Fife map
picture of Scotland with Fife highlighted. Yeah, excellent. Right, good stuff. So this is for anyone who isn't aware of where Fife is in the United Kingdom, highlighted in red there. We're the third largest local authority in Scotland. Population is around about 370,000, which is about 187,000 properties. We're it's quite a diverse area of kind of urban and rural properties. If you were to take Scotland as a whole and look at the kind of demographics of Scotland, you actually find that Fife is almost a perfect fit. So what we do, if we're carrying out a trial, is usually quite a good indication of how things would work out, sort of Scotland-wide. If you go on to the next slide, please. Excuse me, this is just an overview of our current domestic waste collection. So as I said, we've got 187,000 properties. We use a 4-bin service for the majority of them. So that's fortnightly landfill and fortnightly food and garden waste collections, and 4 weekly cans and plastics and 4 weekly paper and cardboard collections. This comes out overall about 13 million bins collected every year. So it's about just over 50-odd thousand bins a day. At present, we've got 26-ton frontline RCVs that carry that out, backed up by 3 smaller rural and hard-to-access vehicles. In the height of summer, when we've got all our seasonal workers, it's about 240 employees that do that. We currently work on a twin shift system, which is how we can get away with only having sort of 30 frontline vehicles. Work from 6 in the morning to 1:30-ish, and then sort of the back of 1 in the afternoon until 9 at night. In October, we've carried out a managing change, so we're going to move to a new 4-day shift pattern. So everyone will work 4 days from 5 with a rolling day off, 9-hour shifts. This has been a really popular move. It's going to give folk a much better work-life balance. So it's been really popular. With the staff voted roughly sort of 75% in favour of the managing change, which was really positive. I think this will be a really good way of improving the staff's lives. And as it's kind of repeated that there, so we've got 13 million bins every year at the service, and as part of that, we do carry out a food waste service. Next slide, please. So what we decided to look at, one of the biggest kind of problems we have, the recycling service is fine across your normal properties, but where we have issues is generally when you get to flats and communal bins. So we carried out a trial in conjunction with Sustainable Sidekicks, and it was to introduce a food waste collection service to high-rise properties. But instead of just simply rolling it out, giving them all a bin, saying on we go, we thought we'd take a more kind of research and science-informed communications approach to see if we could follow the objectives which are on the slide there. So we wanted to maximise participation, learn about barriers and enablers, what people liked, what stopped them from taking part, trial different communication materials to see what worked, what didn't, and also to gather insights for a wider rollout across all the Fife's high and mid-rise properties. You can put the next slide, please. So these were the 3 blocks of flats where we carried out the trial. This is one of the larger kind of urban areas in Fife. Each block has got 86 properties in it. We picked it because it's a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom properties, but also a mixed demographic between owners, private renters, and council houses. So we wanted to see, we didn't want to pick a block which was like just social housing or just all private owners. We wanted to see if we could get that mixture and see what worked for people, what didn't. And these were and we've managed to get the photo taken on a sunny day, so it's even better. The next slide, please. This was the communal food waste bin that we used. This has got a 140 litre bin inside it. For the wider trial, for the wider rollout, we're actually using a slightly different one, which is a 240 litre inside it. But you can tailor it. There's other providers. We used Metro Store, the FXFP model, with a foot pedal. That was one of the key things we found when we carried out surveys and things like that, was the foot pedal, making it touch-free, I think, particularly following COVID. So it makes it easier for folk to participate. They can put their bin in, they don't have to touch it, especially with it being a communal bin. And you can see that's one of our caretakers at the flats, showing that when you press the foot pedal, that's the size of aperture that you're left with, which so essentially just fits a food waste, a kind of bio bag and nothing else. And you can see the messaging that we had on the side of the communal bin. So with on one side we had a little kind of diagram showing exactly what happens to your food waste, how it's collected, how it ends up in our anaerobic digestion plant, and empowering Fife's communal heat network. And on the other side of the bin was a little pictogram showing what goes in and what doesn't go in. And next slide, please. So this was a rough timeline for the project. Excuse me. So pre-trial we had a leaflet explaining what was happening, explaining what goes in your bin, how to use it, as well as a letter that went out with it, explaining why we were doing it. We had initially planned on going out slightly earlier than August last year, but there was a delay to the bin being produced. Unfortunately, there was a slight hold up at the factory, so we ended up being sort of 6 or 7 weeks later than we intended. But however, 21st of August, we got the bins installed, we got the caddies delivered. Just 2-3 weeks after that, Livy Drake, who works for Sustainable Sidekicks, she came up and she carried out household interviews. She carried out a number of interviews with people actually in their houses. She also set up a table in a gazebo outside and was able to interview quite a few people as they were sort of passing by. So that was quite good. We got a really good interactions with a lot of the people living there, got other kind of views. So following that, a few weeks later, we put a poster up in each building stairwell. We'll show an example of that later on in one of the slides. And it was to give an idea, so that people could know what they were doing was making a difference and how much weight each block was actually collecting. And it's a nice way of showing them that. We then put out a postcard. This was so that we got to the point where you're maybe sort of 5 or 6 weeks in, people have maybe starting to run out of bags, maybe not seen the point. So put out a little postcard, and on the postcard it was a reminder of what we were doing, why we were doing it. And also the tea bag attached to it. So the message was, make yourself a cup of tea. Once you've had your cup of tea, you've read the leaflet, pop your tea bag into your food caddy, and put your food caddy, empty it, and take it downstairs into the communal bin. And it was just a little reminder of people of what they can and what they can't put in. We did a more detailed survey, and it was delivered to every household. So there were 256 households, each got the survey. We got about 70 or 80 replies, which we're quite happy with that. I think it was quite a decent return we got. We gave them a self-addressed envelope with each one, so they could send it back into us, so there wasn't any hassle with trying to find websites and things like that. Because there was some of the flats, there was a slightly older demographic owner, so we didn't want to just necessarily have maybe folk who struggled with the internet and things like that. So we made it as easy as possible for people to get the surveys back to us. And the final part of the trial, we did a doorstep collection. When we were carrying out the surveys and the kind of door-to-door interviews, what we discovered was there was probably maybe 3 or 4 folk in each block who indicated that they just weren't quite able to bring their bag, down in the lift, or bring their caddy down in the lift to the communal bin at the bottom. They were essentially housebound. They weren't able, and they had help managing their waste. So we spoke to the caretakers to see if it was something that they were willing to help with, and they were. So it was a kind of really good one together on that. So what we discovered was the caretakers were, as part of their daily work, were checking every floor anyway. They were going around and checking every floor, making sure everything was clean and tidy. So as part of that collection, as part of that sort of service, once a week, we indicated to people you can put your caddy out, and the caretakers would walk past. They would carry like a small bucket. It was enough to hold 3 or 4 food waste bags in it, and then they would take that down to the communal bins for the residents. This proved really popular, and the people who were housebound indicated that they were really happy with this service, and because they were now able to take part, when previously they thought that wasn't something they were going to be able to take part in. So that was really popular. Next slide, please. So here's some of the intervention examples that we've talked about. So on the first left, the Ravenscraig is collecting food waste. This is what we put that in each block, and what we wrote in the yellow boxes was what they had collected that week, and then also what their running total was. So once the posters went up, we could actually go in each week and update them. So as well as knowing what they've collected, they could that week. And they also have a little competition between the 3 blocks to see which block could collect the most. Next to that, it's time for a fresh start. This was just the information that went out to each household. And the one next to that, the bin is for cooked and uncooked food. This was the sticker that we got produced and went on the lid of every caddy that we delivered to each property. Because what we thought was this is, as well as, you can get a letter, but the little pictograms and everything was just something visual that you could, it makes it easy. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to recycle. So once they had that, a little visual reminder every time they go to use their bin. Next slide, please. So the first thing we looked at with the survey results was what, if anything, was putting you off. And I mean, you can see from the graph what really sticks out was the bags not being strong enough. And this was obviously something we were going to have to deal with. We went with the kind of industry standard, which is 12 microns thick. We do just sort of standard bags, but what we found was a lot of people, because they were worried, particularly if you were coming from one of the higher floors, were concerned that the bags were going to start to break, start to rip by the time they got down to the communal bin just outside the flat. So this was something we had to take on board. And then they also had other issues. The caddy taking up space in the house, running out of bags. Some people just didn't see the point. And there was sort of issues with smells and things like that. but the bag's not being strong enough with someone that clearly came up. Next slide, please. So these were the kind of echoed when Livy did the in-person interviews, when she actually went and spoke to people in their houses. Again, sort of the leaking caddy liners that really came up, and the smell from the caddy. The difficulty getting downstairs, which we took on board, and we introduced the assisted collection. And then also where to purchase caddy liners. A lot of people, because they lived in flats, this wasn't something they'd ever had to buy before. Where, if you live in a house, you're used to going to Asda or Aldi or wherever you do your shopping, and you know exactly where to get the caddy liners because you buy them every few months. Because this was residents who'd never had to purchase them before, so just even getting that little bit of extra advice, or giving them extra advice, you don't have to use a caddy. You can wrap wasted newspaper, etc. There's other options you can do if you run out of liners. And next slide, please. But I mean, there wasn't negative. It wasn't just negative. There was also a positive side to the surveys and the interviews. So we spoke to the local residents, we spoke to the caretakers. People weren't, because these are high-rise flats, their landfill waste goes down a chute. So people are saying that the general waste bins are a lot cleaner. They don't have to go to the chute so much. The caretakers were finding that the bins in the bin store obviously are a lot less smelly because they've not got so much food waste in them. And there's not the actual food waste going down the chutes as well. So as you can imagine, when bits of food get stuck to these chutes, there's 20 floors in each of those high rises, so there is a lot of waste getting stuck to the sides. So less food waste going down, less smell. So these were all raised. And when we asked why do you think it's a good idea, quite heartening really, folk that the number one answer was because it's better for the environment. I think that was really good that's why people wanted to take part. Next slide, please. So, it was quite up and down, the weekly weights, although they'd average out to a bit of a pattern. So we were lifting roughly 45 kilos per week from each block. There was a peak in weight on week 3. We had to do a double empty on week 3. But I think because we had everyone on site and we were doing so much interaction with the people living there, it's kind of natural that folk were much more involved that week. And then there was a little peak in week 7. Out of it all, there was only contamination 1 week out of the 3 bins. So in essence, 36 collections because there were 3 bins that were done over 12 weeks, and there was only once that we had to take one of the bins to landfill, and it was somebody who'd put a load and load of takeaway material in it. I don't know if they'd cleared out their car or their van or something, but it was loads, and it was just in one. Other than that, there's very, very little contamination, so it was really good that people were just using it for the food waste. Next slide, please. So in terms of rolling it out, we're now in the kind of getting. Well, actually, there's bins going out this Saturday, which will be part of the wider rollout. And in terms of the infrastructure, what we said was you've got to locate it as close to the buildings as possible, so making it easier for people to use the service. Obviously, you have to have a certain distance in terms of regulations and things, but as close as possible to the front door is what we found. Stronger caddy liners. We did supply a roll for each block at 12 microns, which we now know, okay, that wasn't so good. So we went to Cromwell's. I'm sure other suppliers are available, but that's who we worked with. And what they said, they could do a 16 micron thickness liner for us. And so we ordered a number of them. So when we do the wider rollout, we're going to give people a couple of rolls of the 16 micron bags, which hopefully they'll find a lot better. I think we've got time. We could just digress slightly. The 16 micron bags were due in a couple of weeks ago, but I got a very apologetic call from Cromwell's to tell me that due to the action of the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea, the cargo ship bringing the bags from China had been diverted. So instead of coming via the Suez Canal, it was now coming right round the bottom of Africa. So there's about a 4 or 5 week delay on our bags, thanks to those pesky Houthi rebels who knew. But we'll get them eventually. So in the meantime, for the very first phase of the rollout, we're giving folks some normal bags, but we're giving them extra. Going to give them 3 or 4 rolls instead of just a couple. Anyway, sorry. Back to the story. The bin design, we said choose high quality bins that include pedals and reduced aperture. And you could put litter bins alongside them if contamination is found, but we've never found that necessary yet. And if practical, and if you have caretakers, then offering a doorstep collection for housebound residents can also be helpful. In terms of the comms, definitely plan a pre-launch round of comms so people know what's coming, so they feel involved and they feel informed. You don't just turn up on the doorstep and say, oh, here's your new bin, and they know nothing about it. And all your comms and leaflets should be focusing on the benefits to the household and to their block of flats. The pictorial stuff on the cardies and the stickers, showing you what goes in the bin and what doesn't, really helpful. We are aware in those 3 blocks that we trialled, English isn't everyone's first language that lives in there, so having something pictorial on top of that, it can be really helpful. Providing feedback on the food waste collected and usage so people know they're making a difference. That's when we did the posters. We got feedback that said that was really good. Addressing rumours and fears. So there was the issue of vermin was brought up. Folk being worried about food bins being at their door, but I think once they saw the bins coming in and once how robust they were and absolutely solid metal, it kind of helped to address those fears that it could be rats or anything involved. And answering uncertainty, so having the answers for people if they come to you, things like questions like, oh, where can we get more cardi liners and what else can we use and things like that, have all that ready so that you can help people. Next slide, please. Feedback to residents to reinforce behaviour. So this is what the housing team put out a newsletter just thanking everyone for taking part. We also had a couple of newspaper articles as well as social media stuff that went on at the same time. Again, it's just about motivating people to make them keep using it, highlighting the impact, and also reinforcing it as a social norm that it's just something that they do all the time now. When we'd let them know that they would lifted about a ton of food waste from one of the blocks, someone had said, oh, wow, that's the same as about 20 bags of coal. This was an old mining area. So and that was just something that kind of put it in layman's terms for them, if you like, and kind of like gave them like a pictorial idea of what they've actually thrown away or what's been collected in food waste. So that helped to reinforce behaviour as well. And next slide, please. So in terms of the rollout and the next steps, we used the finding of the data from the trial to write an application to Zero Waste Scotland's Recycling Improvement Fund, which we got. We got £30,000. So we've got 30 of the food waste pods, as well as 2,500 cardies and a number of 2,000 odd bio bags, which are somewhere sailing around Africa at the minute. So once we've got all them, then we'll go carry on. Where the first high-rise properties in Dunfermline, yep, they've actually not. When I prepared the slides, I was hoping to say they've had the bins installed, but they will be installed in 2 days. So I was close. They're going out this Saturday, and the Fife-wide rollout is going to continue all summer. After that, we want to work with housing and get all the chutes closed for the high-rise blocks. We've already done it with the first 3 at Broomhead and Dunfermline, which are getting done just now. So the food waste bins for them are the last stage of that. But we'd like to get all these chutes closed and get people actually walking down and recycling. We're also like wanting to look at areas with no access to recycling. So we're looking at flats above shops in our cities and or one city and town centres in Fife. Because we've got areas like Dunfermline and St Andrews, we've got a lot, especially in St Andrews, we've got a lot of students who live above the shops and only have a landfill-only collection service. So it's something we want to potentially roll out to them as well. Next slide, please. It's just me saying thank you for listening. All my contact details are there if anyone wants to get in touch about anything that we've spoken about. And I will hand back to Stuart.
Sandy, thank you. That's great. I'm sure people are going to be looking at those contact details and for all speakers. Appreciate that. Thank you, Sandy. Really interesting stuff. Interesting just seeing it all set out in its sort of step-by-step process. We're actually just running a little bit late, and I'm hoping that you're not going to worry too much about that, just because the quality of the material, the information is so good. So we are going to finish about 10 past or 4:15. Finally, I want to invite Charlotte from the company shop to actually talk to us. She's going to talk about using food surplus for positive economic, environmental and social impact. Charlotte, I enjoyed your presentation when I heard you speaking before, and I'm sure people are going to enjoy it today as well. So I'm going to hand over to you now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. Hopefully this will finish on a slightly different vein, in that this is the organisation that I work with. This is more of an industry solution as opposed to more of a local authority one. So I'll crack on in the interests of time. So as I said, my name is Charlotte Slack. I am Head of Partnerships for Community Shop, which is within the Company Shop Group. Just to give a bit of background in terms of who we are as an organisation, we as Company Shop Group have been around for over 50 years now. You track that all the way through to today, and we are the UK's largest redistributor of surplus products, supporting the FMCG, which is the fast moving consumer goods supply chain, with anything and everything that becomes surplus within that process. In 2021, we became part of the Biffa Group. So we have a wider group company that we report into that provide total waste solutions as well. But today I'm just going to be focusing on the company shop and the community shop element of things. So just to explain that a little bit further. So we are the Company Shop Group, and we support businesses to help bring meaningful support to some of the most deserving communities within the UK. So we have two streams to our group. We have Company Shop, where we have a network of 14 membership-based stores, where we redistribute our surplus products, and we also operate a handful of on-site manufacturing staff shops and click and collects that I'll show you in a moment's time in terms of location. We also then have Community Shop, which uses that exact same surplus but to deliver a social impact. So Community Shop is a not-for-profit social enterprise that uses that surplus food to tackle some of the root causes of food insecurity in some of the most deprived areas within the UK, something that we are extremely proud of. We've just celebrated its 10th birthday, which is brilliant. And we have about a network of 12 of those, soon to be 13 within the next month. So in terms of where we are throughout the UK, hopefully this next map just gives you a bit of an indication in terms of our scale as an organisation. As I said, the blue dots represent all of our superstores, which are our membership stores, primarily open to those individuals that actually work within that FMCG industry. We then have community shops, which are our orange dots. We then have a handful of staff shops, which are based on our manufacturing partners' sites. The large proportion of those, as you will be able to see, are actually with our main partner, Ocado. But we have a couple of others, one at Heinz in their Wigan factory, one at Premier Foods, which is really local to where I am today in South Yorkshire, Barnsley, making all of the delicious Mr. Kipling cakes. And then also we have one in Unilever in Leeds where they make deodorants. And finally, the purple dots just represent an e-commerce solution. So it's a click and collect style model. At the moment, that is purely for Nestle. So just to give a little bit more context in terms of our members and those superstores. So as I said, our main member is from that FMCG supply chain. So ultimately, the reason we do that is because they understand the concept of surplus. So if you have one person who works in a biscuit manufacturer and today they loaded the wrong mix of chocolate, so they've used dark chocolate on what should have been milk chocolate packaging, that product's not exactly going to find its way into Tesco, or it shouldn't, for example. But similarly, you could have a ready meals manufacturer that uses the incorrect sauce, or the viscosity isn't right of that product. So they might not work in each other's businesses, but they understand the concept of surplus, whether it's from the farmer who grows a crop of wonky carrots all the way through to the distribution and the logistics of those products, whereby something happens, they're delayed for 4 hours on the motorway, and then that can't get into depot. As you will see on the screen, there is a number of other industries that our stores are open to. Primarily, those blue light services were something that were at the request of our retail partners. We don't just open up our membership because ultimately the brands that we support and handle are not our own. So we always have to do everything from a membership perspective in line with what our retail and our brand partners would be happy with. In COVID, we slightly expanded our membership to be more aligned with supporting those wider communities that we do within Community Shop. So we also allow members who work for registered charities, but also those that are on means tested benefits, exactly the same to our Community Shop, to access our stores and be able to benefit from great products at brilliant prices. So just to give you a bit of context, if you're thinking from an industry perspective of the types of products that we deal with, genuinely, easiest way to put it is anything that you would find in a normal retailer. So it could be food, it could be non-food, it could be clothing, it could be electrical, it could be alcohol, pet care, you name it. Our business is set up to support that industry to redistribute it. The right-hand side of the screen just gives you a little bit more information in terms of the reasons why we get surplus. So it could be trials of new products, new packaging. It could be that a product has been delisted or it's got a new brand refresh and they've got some products sat in a warehouse that is in old packaging. It could be, as I was kind of saying before, manufacturing errors that happen day in, day out, way more than I'm sure the industry would like. So there's a whole host of reasons, but hopefully that just gives you a feel for the different types of products that we support our partners with. In terms of what makes us different as an organisation, as Stuart was alluding to at the beginning, so we as an organisation pay our partners for their products. We have paid back £158 million back into our industry over the past 5 years, and £47 million of that was in the last year alone. So from a commercial perspective, it is an extremely valuable service back to our industry partners because it allows them to recover some of the money that they have incurred in actually producing that product. Through the work that we do at Community Shop, we also are able to offer our clients a social impact and a social return as well, which is becoming ever increasingly important in today's day and world. So just to give you a bit of context in terms of those impacts, in the past 10 years, we have created 31 million meals through Community Shop. And actually at Community Shop, we feed kids for free every single day of the year. So over the past 10 years, that has amounted to over 800,000 children having ate with us for free. From an environmental perspective, this has been important for quite a while now, but again, ever more so in today. So in the last year, through redistributing the surplus products that we did as an organisation, we saved over 122,000 tonnes of CO2. So from a business perspective, we try to kind of cover all angles to help all of our partners meet, whether it's CSR or whether it's now ESG, whatever that might be, we provide a very flexible solution for our partners. Just to give you a live case study, we were working with a global food and beverage organisation. They've got multiple manufacturing sites and distribution centres throughout the UK. They work with us on a split model whereby we give them a commercial return, but they also choose to donate some of those products to Community Shop as well. So they're on what we call a 75-25 split. In terms of the engagement that we did with them from 2022 into 2023, we increased their surplus redistribution by 284%. That's a really simple process for us. It's just about going, engaging with those sites and understanding some of those challenges and helping to unlock surplus. They increased their social donations to over £750,000 to Community Shop. So they're one of our key strategic partners here. But we were also at the same time able to increase their commercial return by 46%. In terms of why people partner with us, we can cover nationwide. We have dedicated distribution centres. And in terms of that scale, we've handled over 100 million units last year. So when often people think about surplus, they think of white van, warehouse, bit of a Del Boy type approach. And we couldn't be further from that as a professional organisation that is a key part of supporting our industry. As I've kind of alluded to just before, so we offer our teams up as free resources to people. They are manufacturing specialists that help our manufacturing supply chain partners to identify surplus and come up with ways in which we can redistribute it. But ultimately, at the core of everything we do, we care about and look after the brands that we deal with just as though they were ours. The second part, which is obviously probably what Stuart heard me talk about a little bit more at the Waste Conference in London, was Community Shop. So Community Shop is made up of 3 connected spaces. And our mission within Community Shop is to build stronger individuals and more confident communities. Community Shop is about more than just food. We are a hand up when life can be at its toughest, as opposed to a handout. So those 3 spaces comprise of a convenienced size store that members are able to access and get deeply discounted products all throughout the year. So that creates quite an immediate impact, because if you have been experiencing food insecurity and not being able to put food consistently on the table for you and your families, being able to access a range of products at deeply discounted prices alleviates that pressure. What that then allows you to do is spend more time thinking and focusing on some of those root causes of why you have been experiencing food insecurity, which is where our kitchen and hub spaces come in. So our kitchen, as I said, kids eat free every single day of the year with us. It is not a holiday program, which is what you often hear about in mainstream retail. But yeah, over and above just a warm smile and a cup of tea and a biscuit and a place where you can get delicious home cooked food for great prices, Community Kitchen is about bringing people together through food. If you think about birthdays, celebrations, Christmas, Easter, religious festivals, summer barbecues, we bring each other together through food. And that is what Community Kitchen is about. And it's about building those relationships and resilience within communities. They do all sorts of courses, kids cook clubs, family cook clubs, melting pots, family feast days. Again, all of which is about designed to bring people together through that power of food. And then I'll switch back, because for me, our hub place is the icing on top of the cupcake. And Community Hub is the space in which we support our members to explore those root causes of food insecurity and think about, and we call it our what if plan. What if life could look different? What if tomorrow does not have to look like today? And we very much base that on an asset-based model as opposed to a deficit one. And it's a space where people can increase their confidence, build on their strengths, and overcome some of those barriers in their lives, and ultimately get them back into mainstream retail and no longer needing the support of Community Shops. So it's very much a transitional model. Just to give it some numbers, in the past 10 years, so Community Shop saved its members over £51.7 million on their shopping. We've delivered over 175,000 personal development programs. We've got 2,500 people back into work. 800,000 kids have eaten for free. I could go on. But really simply, that has all been powered through surplus food. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Charlotte, thank you. Really, really interesting. I hope you'll agree with me that our speakers today have been absolutely superb. Can I thank Sarah, Sandy, and Charlotte for their presentations. I think the fact that we've had almost no questions, I think, is probably a response to that, really. Those presentations were very full and very thorough, and really interesting. Thanks very much for joining us. Thank you for the time putting the presentations together. Thank you for joining this webinar. We look forward to seeing you in the future, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.